So we're going to go over some prompt best practices. Jim's going to lead us through some things that, some key points, some key things that that to help build better prompts. And then we're going to go over when to use prompts and when to use agents. That's probably one of the bigger things I've seen from my customers over the past few months is I keep adding the same prompt into Copilot to get a specific output or having specific instructions. So a lot of times when we're doing the same thing over and over again, it's actually a smart way to move that into an agent, so you don't have to do all of that at advanced prompting. We can instruct and build instructions in an agent to get an output that we want. So for some of those, when to prompt, when to build an agent, and then we'll go over some use cases, some common use cases for agents that we're seeing right now in our industry with our customers and so forth. And then we'll dive into some live demos of some of the agents that we've built, both in Agent Builder, now called Copilot Studio Lite, as well as in Copilot Studio. So with that said, I'm Michael Goat. I'm a senior solutions engineer with Microsoft, and I'm also joined by Jim Warner, who's another solutions engineer with us here. And Jim, welcome. Why don't you kick us off?
Excellent. Thanks, Michael. All right. So let's, yeah, I'm a senior solutions engineer. We've been working with Copilot for a year and a half now. So, to get us going, we're going to start talking about what makes a prompt effective, and the differences between prompting and agents. So before we dive into the mechanics, let's start with the big picture. What actually makes a prompt effective? At its core, a good prompt is like giving clear instructions to a teammate. It's specific, purposeful, and sets expectations. The more precise you are, the better the Copilot can understand your intent and deliver useful results. Whether you're asking for a summary, a draft, or analysis, the goal is to reduce vagueness and guide the AI toward the outcome you want. And we'll walk through a couple simple techniques here. So, I think you blasted through the first one. Okay, be clear, specific. Yeah, provide context, right? Context is key. Whether it's the business scenario, the audience, or the tool you're using, adding background helps Copilot respond more accurately. Next. All right. Defining the output format. Tell Copilot how you want the answer. Should it be a bulleted list, a table, a summary, or a draft email? Defining the format saves time and revisions.
I'm going to pipe on here. So I think this one is actually an important one. A lot of times when we're building our prompts, we just kind of ask Copilot to do something. And I think it's really important to kind of think about when you're prompting Copilot, how do you want the output of that? Like that's something that I actually struggled with when I first started prompting. Is I didn't really think about how I wanted that. Like, do I want that in a table? Do I want a comparison chart or something like that? So that's actually a really important one. When you I always kind of look at it thinking about like before you start typing all this stuff out to Copilot, like think in your brain, how do you want the output? Like visualize that and then put that into words in Copilot. So I think this is actually a really good one, one that I personally missed out on a little bit and had to kind of train myself how to do.
Yeah, and since GTP5 rolled out, I'm seeing that you don't have to, give it the clear format sometimes. It actually gives you the bulleted list, markup language, all that stuff. But yeah, this is definitely a key, right? Be specific.
It's getting a lot smarter over time.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot smarter over time.
Thinking ahead of time, but it's good from a human perspective to kind of think about that and visualize how you personally want that information out.
Absolutely. Yeah, in 3.5 it was a pain in the butt, right? I mean, getting it to, to do, you had to be very crisp and clear. Now it's getting a little bit easier. All right.
You're just a baby.
Yeah, just a baby.
I'm just a baby.
Yeah. All right. So you set constraints, right? Constraints help narrow the response. You can specify word limits, tone, style, or even what to exclude. It's like setting guardrails for better output. In this example, generate a LinkedIn post under 200 words, casual tones, no emojis, right?
I think this is the no emojis is something that I often do a lot. I don't know about other AIs. Like ChatGPT does it a lot. I don't spend a lot of time with Gemini, but a lot of times if you see a lot of emojis in like a email response or something like that, I can tell like right away that was written by AI. Like I'm not
Right.
personally going to think about all those emojis. So like I think this is a good one. Think about again, like kind of visualize what you want this to look like and put some of those like Jim said guardrails in there because especially the back to like the audience like if you're in you probably want really versus maybe an IT leader that wants some more detail in there. So some of those restraints in there where you want to put, a less content or make this consolidate this more and stuff like that. I think those are very important things to think about when you're asking the AI to do something.
Yeah, yeah. So that leads to the next slide, which is perfect setup. Thanks, Michael. So
Yeah. I didn't do that on
uh,
purpose, but it works.
yeah, no, it worked. Right. So use role or perspective, right? Just like Michael mentioned, framing the prompt from a role or a point of view, like a clinical manager, or from the customer's perspective. It helps tailor the response to the right voice and priorities.
Yeah. I have actually an example from probably about a month ago, but I was talking to a customer and they used the role perspective in a really creative way. So one of the things that they were kind of like at a mind block, and actually Copilot's really good for this. If you're they were trying to negotiate with the vendor on one of the renewals, and they were just at a mind block where they couldn't figure out how to respond and take the negotiation to the next level. So what they did is they took role, they went to Copilot and say, I want to act like this vendor and you're going to help me negotiate, and they pretty much use it as simulation where Copilot was acting as someone, and they would bounce back ideas and questions and stuff like that and eventually help them get past that mind blocker. So a lot of creative
Yeah.
ways that we can do that, but the role and perspective is really important, especially like when I first got hired on Microsoft. Actually, for my interview, it was a 3 panelist interview, 3 hours long, and I haven't interviewed forever, so like I had no idea what kind of questions to ask and stuff like that. So I actually went to Copilot, and I said, "Act like a Microsoft interviewer, and ask me questions, coach me, and stuff like that." So that I use that role perspective a lot, and it really kind of tones the output of that question or that answer you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen customers where they'll say, "Oh, pretend you're a lawyer, right, and analyze this contract for blah blah blah." So yeah, setting that stage or that perspective is quite helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So break down complex tasks, right? So if it's a multi-step, split it into smaller prompts. You can always iterate on your prompts. So if you get an output and you need to give it task by task instead of trying to throw everything in there, that's really the best way to do it, right? So don't overload a single prompt. Break big tasks into smaller steps.
Yeah,
It
I
makes it
think
easier for Copilot to follow and give more control over the outcome.
Yep, absolutely. And this has gotten better over time. I think the thing with Copilot that is important to remember is Copilot has a memory. So as you're in that conversation with Copilot, everything that you talk about, you can ask more questions, and it takes everything that you've talked about as part of that kind of output. So um, it's be collaborative with Copilot. And the thing that I've learned is if you don't like what you want, you get try again. Like summarize my meeting transcript, it'll give you a dump that may be just what you want, or now you can turn that summary into an email. Like keep stacking on things. Like Copilot's never going to say no, essentially. So just keep working. And like there's times where I'm like building something, and I'm like in like I've done like 5 prompts, and I'm like, okay, now let's act like a healthcare practitioner or something like that. And then it starts remembering that, and then all the new stuff is in the perspective of healthcare. So like keep reiterating on that until you really get to where you want to be.
Yeah, yeah, good insights. Okay, so avoid ambiguity. Don't use vague terms like make it better or improve. Um, these types of prompts just confuse Copilot. Avoid words like thing or stuff. Be precise in your ask. If you're not sure how to phrase it, think about what you'd ask a colleague, right? So, Michael, I need you to do X, Y, Z. I can't just, throw something over to you and say, hey, can you do that one thing for me? Michael will be like, what? What's that one thing? I don't know what that one thing is. So be very precise.
Yeah. I like your example of talking to a coworker. I often think about it in the ways of I have a 8 and a 6-year-old. So like, if I tell my 8 or 6-year-old to go clean their room, they will clean their room to what they think their room is clean. But if I give them instructions, or my wife more specifically gives them instructions of like, pick up your socks and put your clothes away and do this, that helps them understand what clean room means. So like, yeah, be descriptive. Think about like as you're talking to another coworker and what you want them to do. Look at Copilot kind of like a very similar way as that kid needing more instructions or that coworker looking to do something for you. So let's get into like some examples of like what is a bad prompt, and then we'll kind of peel that apart, and then we'll look at what a good prompt would look like.
Yeah, yeah. Really. So, an example. Tell me about marketing. It's too broad, right? If you're asking Copilot, just tell me about like what do you want to know specifically about marketing? Doesn't know if you want a strategy, a definition, or campaign ideas. It's just a guessing game, and it's going to have to start and give you vague information back. It's kind of like garbage in, garbage out, right?
Mm-hmm.
The good thing you can iterate on that, but you want to have clarity. You want context. You want the format and define the constraints. And if you can add a role or perspective, that's going to be very helpful.
So what a good prompt it looks like is something like this.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So rewrite this email for a healthcare executive audience, keep it under 150 words, professional tone, make it clear, concise, present the output as ready to send email. This is clear, scoped, and actionable, right? This gives Copilot, this is a very very well crafted prompt. We're really hitting all those marks that we just covered.
Yeah. The thing that I've learned though is sometimes I'm not great at writing prompts. Like this would honestly probably take a lot of brain power for me to think about. So there's actually a little, I don't know if you want to call a hack or a tip or whatever, but use Copilot to help you write your prompts. Like Copilot knows what it needs in order to get the right output. So if it's too much brain power for sometimes to like build the prompt and think about all that, just use Copilot to build it, copy paste it, and then get that information back. It's a little hack that I do quite often.
Right. Yeah. And we even have like a prompt coach. So
yeah.
There's an agent that's it's a first party agent from Microsoft called Prompt Coach. You can feed information into that and help coach on more complex and well-crafted prompts.
Absolutely. All right. So we talked about prompting best practices, and we did that because it's important to know how to prompt, because we're going to get into when should I prompt and when should I build an agent. This is a question that I've gotten quite a bit on which is the right approach. So breaking this down a little bit, when we're prompting inside of Copilot, so we're just going to open up Copilot and start talking. Where prompting is really good is it's broad and it's high learning. So it's when we say broad, when we put a prompt into Copilot, it's looking at everything within our tenant and everything on the web, essentially. So it's looking at everything very, very high level and trying to get an answer back. So it's very broad in that way. When we start building things like agents, we can now narrow that focus. So we can do that through things like instructions, where we're instructing the agent to think a certain way, to output a certain way, or to use other content to help you structure something. So it's very targeted, and there's clear instructions on how we want our information back to us. So that's kind of the two big differences there. Very broad when we start prompting, and that there has definite use cases, and in agents, we start focusing how with the structure and how we want that outputted. So to break that down a little bit further, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. This is a great way, with the difference between just prompting, it's a quick way to do it, but the agents, right? This is where we start getting into the personal or team level workflows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to show some really cool ones. I've built some really cool ones that have helped me here at Microsoft. So we'll dive into some of those examples there. But let's break it down a little bit more. So when we look at Copilot prompting, again, it's best for quick contextual type help, very broad. So it's good for things like fast answers when we want, we just need like, you're on a call and you're trying to figure out like a good example is, I've been on plenty of calls here at Microsoft where they start using acronyms and I'm like, what does that mean? So I'll go to Copilot and say, quick, what does this mean? So it gives me that answer super quick where we need something very fast, very transactional, or we need to summarize or extract data. That's really good. Here's a Word document or here's an email, summarize this. A little bit of light automation, like rewrite this, draft a follow-up. We can do that directly within Copilot or within Copilot chat within Outlook. So just, quick stuff or context aware stuff or really single turn where we're not doing a lot of complex, if this happens, then that happens, then do this. That's where Copilot prompting is really good for. Where we get into agent flows is where we need things like persistent memory and formatting. So this is where you go into building your instructions, and those instructions are telling that agent to structure that output in a certain way or to follow certain patterns or follow certain knowledge bases on how you want information gathered and queried out to you. Or we need things like complex decision making. So this is where we can bring in things like triggers and workflows and have that agent reach out to different connectors and third-party systems to understand things and do things. Really where I've like a good example of where I've turned a prompt into an instruction is I actually built an agent called Boss Buddy. So essentially, I kind of virtualized my manager. I took everything that I know about my manager, his perspective, the way that he kind of looks at things and talks about things, the way that he looks at KPIs and stuff like that, and I kind of built those instructions. I actually used Copilot to build the instructions. I just kind of brain dumped into Copilot and it built the instructions for me. But I was, and then after I built that agent, I ask it to help me with my one-on-one. So I say part of those instructions to look at all of the stuff that I've done in the past 7 to 14 days, help me kind of structure out my wins, how I've used AI, where I help supported people. That was something very hard for me to do. And I was doing that in Copilot, and I would take these like 500 word prompts and put it in every time and then add some additional prompting over there. So that was like, why am I doing this repetitively? Like, this is something that is persistent memory. I need it in a specific format. So I built an agent for it. And it's just so much easier for me to go to agent and just hit essentially just a couple words and bam, I've got the structure that I want every time. And it's consistent for my manager as well. So just a kind of example of how I went from prompting to agent workflows. So let's look at examples of some prompts that are examples of prompt only use cases. So here we've got like summarize and document. Very good, very something fast and transactional. Summarize this 10-page policy. You bring it in like, let's think about, we got open benefits coming up soon. Maybe you've got some brand new benefits. Take that PDF that you get from your HR team and dump it in there and say, summarize this, or what does this mean? So, pulling information out of a document of sorts, generating a meeting recap. So if you got a Copilot license, hey, look at this meeting that I had last week, give me the action items and stuff like that. So these are all kind of prompts that are really good that to use directly within Copilot because they're looking more broadly, but they're doing very transactional things. But when we look at prompts that we can look at, around agents, when we look at agents as looking at personal productivity or some kind of personal process or business process, that's where agents make the most sense. So like, an onboarding workflow, create a checklist for an onboarding employee. So maybe we've got Workday connector to an agent and got some additional knowledge bases from Workday plus SharePoint, and it's instructed to build out a checklist in a very structured way. So that's a good role for a agent, because that's not something that would take a lot of complex prompting in Copilot to do, something that I don't want to leverage the brain power to do. Or creating an iTicket automation. I'm actually going to show you this, having a ServiceNow connector and opening tickets, summarizing KBs and stuff like that. So these are all kind of ideas of when we should take a prompt and make it an agent in instructions, and make it more complex and more usable for me as an end user, as well as maybe my team or even my organization as a whole. Any questions we got in the chat, Nick, or anything like that? Nothing yet? All right.
No, nothing yet. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them, and these guys will answer them on screen as well.
So some common use cases. We're going to start getting into agents, and we're going to get into like some live demos in a second. But what are some common use cases people are creating with Copilot and agents? I've got 3 that I'm going to share with you. So the first one are kind of operation and policy documents. So this is where I look at as a document search agent. So have you ever kind of been in that where you've got a huge SharePoint, or you're just trying to search in SharePoint and trying to find something? A policy or an SOW or something like that. That can be really, like, search has come a long way, but it can be really difficult, especially if you don't know which SharePoint that's on and so forth. So I have a lot of organizations that are creating these type of search agents where a benefits agent that's grounded in all of the benefits information, so all of the insurance and stuff like that. So they have a dedicated agent to ask benefits questions, or maybe they've got an HR agent or a ServiceNow or an employee IT help desk agents where they can ask, like, how do I get VPN on my device, or how do I enroll my device into MDM to get email and stuff like that. So those are very common agents that we're starting to see, just because 1, they're easy to build, and then 2, they have ROI very quickly. We can now reduce the amount of search time that an end user has from sometimes 30 minutes to a couple minutes. Jim, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So just to expand on that, quick plug. So we have the employee self-service agent. We're expecting that to go GA here in the next week or 2, maybe around Ignite. But generally, all those things that Michael was just talking about, ServiceNow, Workday, those types of connectors, answering benefits, opening a ticket, troubleshooting on your laptop. We're going to be launching that. It's been in private preview, and it's going to GA soon.
Yeah, that's exciting. Some really cool stuff. If Google, there's some really cool videos on there. Like, go to YouTube and search employee self-service Microsoft. You'll probably find some really cool stuff going on there. The second is like training and communication documents. So this is where kind of similar to the document search library, but this is where we're wanting to surface specific training or education materials. And a lot of times we see organizations, like, those materials have to be structured in a very specific way. Or maybe they're meeting notes and they want them structured in a certain way, kind of like what I do with my boss buddy, where I have it structured in 5 areas to bring attention to. An agent's really good at that, because not only can it search that, but it can structure the output. So as it creates that kind of onboarding or that training material, it creates in the specific way that the organization has policies and has built previous training and stuff like that around. So a very common one. And then the last one is reports, legal, and review documents. This is actually really cool. So I've had quite a few organizations that create agents that do things like redlining. So if we can have an agent that we add different documents to and say, compare these and contrast these, what are the differences there? Or maybe they have an SOW that they need to have rewritten with a very specific structure and so forth. Doing that, sure, we could do that in Copilot and have some really advanced prompts, but it's just easier to make an agent that's already structured and instructed in how to properly do that for an organization. So those are some of the kind of the 3 main ways, 3 big ones that I would say organizations are kind of approaching agents. There's a lot of other use cases, but when we break down the top 3, those are probably the ones that I see the most. Jim, any thoughts on those?
Yeah, totally agreed. I mean, these are great use cases. And what I'm going to be showing next will be setting some of this stuff up in Copilot Studio Lite, but you can always, further extend the capabilities using Copilot Studio proper. But yeah, these are the types of things I'm talking to my customers about. They're coming up with these use cases where, they're looking at contract, risk analysis, regulation intelligence, right? To say what are the current regulations, what do I need to do, create a brief on that. Just kind of these are definitely the main use cases that I'm seeing as well.
Cool. All right, Jim, why don't you take the reins?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I really just want to walk through real quick on how to create an agent. This is how simple it is. This is going to be the Copilot Lite experience. And there's a couple components. Really, not much technical expertise is required here. So let's kick this off. So I'm going to go into Copilot. I'm going to go ahead and click create an agent. All right, and you see we got, it is branded Copilot Studio, but this is really the light version. You can see new agent, and I can use an existing template from here if I know that I like one of these agents and I want to leverage that as a template. I can do that. I can say, give it a title. I can describe this further. This is the thing that takes the most time, right? When creating this Copilot Studio Lite agent is the instructions. What type of instructions do I want to provide to this if I'm doing, legal review, summarizations, things like that. But usually I'll get pretty detailed in here, right? Defining its tone, outline any rules, guidelines it must follow. You can even distinguish any processes that you need to follow per your organizational guidelines. You also have a knowledge, right? This is where you can drop in a specific document, or you can reference certain websites where you can use this as its knowledge base. This is what the agent will be grounded in specifically. I have additional
Jim,
information.
real quick, do me a favor.
Yep.
Hit the search. Just hit that search by name. Just hit that little box there.
Which
search by name in the knowledge section.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yep. So, and then scroll down a little bit. All the way down till you get past all websites. So this is a really cool one. So one of the things that it took me a second because they updated UI, but I was looking for where do I upload all my stuff? I was looking for an actual upload button. So if you just click in that little box, all of that stuff pops open. But these three down here, my SharePoint files, my Teams files, my emails, those are fairly new. They're only they've only been there for maybe 2 months or so. But this is actually when I created my Boss Buddy, I added all my Teams chats in my email. So it looks at all of your graph data, which is super cool. That was something that we didn't have as part of Agent Builder for a while. We had SharePoint sets and stuff like that, but now we can integrate our Teams and our emails. So that's a really cool thing when you're building your agents.
Yep. Yeah, great point. Yep. And then, of course, you can upload from a device. You can attach, certain cloud files. But this is a great way to quickly get to what you need, right? Whether it's all files, sites, or chats. And then you can identify, this is important because an agent really is supposed to be a narrow set of data that you're grounding the agent in, right? So if I specify knowledge sources, I can say, don't look at the web, don't just focus in on these knowledge sources for any responses. And here's where I can provide the agent specific prompts, suggested prompts. So I'm going to start with an agent that I've already developed. And I'm going to show you real quick what it looks like as far as the anatomy of what the agent consists of. So you can see the name, description, and here's where I said, this is probably going to take you a little bit to put in here, but really it's not that bad. You're going to give it all the things we talked about when we went through the regular prompting. We're going to give it rules for really looking at contracts, and you can see if I can also compare it. So if I have a standardized contract template, I could use that, this agent. I can specify that in the knowledge source, and I can say, here's a reference document this is our gold standard, and I want you to compare these contracts to it. I don't have that set up, but I can specify the instructions, and I can specify that document in the knowledge source. And then you can see here down at the bottom, I have just a couple different prompts. I can add more, but I have 4 different prompts here: summarize, highlight, ambiguous, and classify. So let's go look at this, and let's run a couple things. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and summarize key risks or compliance issues in this contract, and I'm going to specify a document. I got a couple sample. I got a managed care contract, and I want to look at it or do a summarize on it. So here you can see, because of the instructions, right, that I provided, it's giving me detailed information. It's not just throwing out generic information in a response. So you can see it has the key contract terms, key risks, compliance issues, and recommendations, and of course the reference. I can show a red line version with your suggested edits. That's just a suggested follow-up prompt that Copilot came up with by itself. I did not specify in the suggested. And you can see the results, the red line managed care contract, and it goes through the purpose, terms, the different sections of that contract. I can go a step further and say, okay, put this in a PDF as well. And in this case, I'm going to do my own. Oh my gosh.
It's okay, Jim. One thing I've learned from Copilot is really good at figuring out what spelling errors we have.
Yeah, true. Thanks for making me feel better. All right, so you can see this is just key changes for legal, put it in a table, and the recommended follow-up. So pretty powerful for an agent that I created in about 7 minutes. All right.
Yeah, I'd probably say this saves you a buttload of time.
Absolutely. Yep. So I also have a regulatory intelligence agent that I created in about even less time, maybe 5 minutes. You can see the instructions and some suggested prompts. But this is really looking at regulations around the provider space. You can see telehealth reimbursement, HIPAA enforcement. Let's go ahead and run a couple prompts. So right now I'm going to do, let's see. Just going to do the suggested prompt here. Of course, this is going to be specific to your organization, to a specific department. You can create these, share it out amongst your team, your coworkers that might be interested in a repeatable process that has like a narrowed down scope. Right, so here you can see that it's come back with key updates for 2025. I can break down changes for specifically behavioral health as a suggested follow-up. Responses are pretty snappy, and I can even do my own. And now I have provider specifics, right? What does this regulation mean to physicians, nurse practitioners, psychologists, so on and so forth? And you can see it's automatically just took the liberties of providing the table of the results as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
One of the things I'll add is, so you saw some of those starter prompts that Jim said. When you're building out your agent, you have those starter prompts. The starter prompts are there, especially if you're sharing these out with coworkers. They help. They're not the end all be all, but they help coworkers understand how to use the agent. I think we're only limited to 3 now. There used to be 6 that showed up, but I think there's only 3 now with Copilot Studio Lite. With some of the UI changes, but
just
you
can
with
actually see more. Yeah,
there you go.
so
Just
you
see
can
more.
actually,
Got it.
yeah, they popped that in not too long
So
ago.
that's something I learned today. Today I learned. But yes, just view those starter prompts, especially if you're sharing, to help others understand how to utilize the agent. And then don't be afraid to create your agent and then reiterate on it. So as you build your agent, maybe you need to edit the instructions. It's very easy to edit those instructions and retest and stuff like that. So don't think like it's I build it once and that's it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like reiterate, like where agents are there to be dynamic and kind of evolve with us as based on the needs that we have.
Yeah, so editing, and then you can see up here in the top, I can update this, but I can also share, right? So I can start looking at, specific users, groups, or teams. So if I have a department I want to share with my coworkers, I can share pretty easily through here. And then once I share that, it'll pop up into their list of agents over here on the left panel. But anytime you would update your instructions, put your updates in, and you do have to update and publish the agent again.
For those IT admins out there are governance controls around the sharing. So that's brand new. It just launched on Monday, but we can restrict the anyone link. So there's some governance there around the sharing of these agents in here. But we're at 11:40. Why don't we? You want to transition over to Copilot Studio, Jim?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, I'm done. Yep.
All right. All right. So we looked at prompting. We looked at building agents directly within the Copilot web UI. And when you build Copilot agents directly in the web UI that you saw from Jim, those are like personal agents or small team agents. So we can share those broadly, but there's some legwork that has to go involved. So what about when we want to create an agent that our organization can use as at scale within the whole enterprise? This is where we would actually want to leverage things like Copilot Studio, which is Microsoft's platform for building out agents. Studio is a low code to pro code development platform, but we can still do low to mid code in there. And I'm going to show you an example here. So let's imagine that I'm a user and I just got my device and I need to get a VPN on it because I need to get to an application or something like that. I can go to, and my organization built an IT help desk agent. So I can go into my IT help desk agents because that's where I've been trained to go to kind of find out all this information. And I'm just going to hit, how do I get VPN on my device? So what this is doing is actually, this agent is actually connected to ServiceNow. So it's actually looking at the ServiceNow knowledge bases to find this information. So not only can we build an agent that's grounded in our internal SharePoint sites and stuff like that, we can reach out outside of our tenant to pull that information because maybe that's where it lives. So it gives me some general information on there. And me as an end user, maybe I try this, maybe I don't, maybe this looks a little overwhelming. So I just want someone to do it for me. So I'm going to say create a ticket. So now what we're doing is that we're actually writing to ServiceNow. So now I don't know what my ServiceNow URL is. I don't know, actually, it's been a while since I've done this, so I can't remember how to create a ticket, but I know that I've been trained to go to my IT help desk agent to do all of this stuff. So right here it says provide a short description. Can't connect to, I've done this quite a few times, so I've got some cache stuff in
here.
Hey,
Michael, I don't think you're sharing. You want to slide your share over?
Oh, am I not?
Nope.
Okay, let's try this again then. Thank you. Is that better? You seeing something? You should see, hopefully see my desktop here.
Yeah, you got to hit the toggle on the left.
Yeah,
the webinar.
the toggle.
We're good now? Okay, so brief replay. I'm building a station. I asked VPN to Great. Now I'm in here and I'm said create a ticket. So I'm directly within Copilot and I'm going through the process of creating a ticket. So it said create a ticket, provide a short title for the issue. Great. Can't connect the VPN. Now provide a more detailed description. And this is actually when you build a ticket in ServiceNow. This is all the things that I'm going to fill out. So try to connect, try to install. Let's do that. And so I put in my brief 1-sentence description. I'm sure IT is going to love me for that, but confirm. So there we go. And then at the bottom, it has this create button. So it's confirming here's everything I hit. I'm going to hit create. And that's going to create an incident for me. And you're actually, you'll be able to see this incident in ServiceNow. So if I want ServiceNow, I'll be able to see this. But let's pretend it's a day later, and I'm going to ask, what tickets do I have open? So maybe I'm an end user, or maybe I'm an IT help desk agent, and I want to see what tickets I'm assigned to and stuff like that. I can go to a Copilot agent. I can see all of my tickets. So here's my brand new one. I've done this a couple times, so I can see that. But the thing is, we can build an agent that's grounded in these different work business processes and business applications for our end users just to go to Copilot, hit an agent, and do all of this stuff. And I don't no longer have to remember where to go to ServiceNow and stuff like that. And what this looks like from the IT side of things, I'm in Copilot Studio here, and I'm inside of my agent. So I'm inside of this IT help desk agent, and I've got some instructions in here. But more importantly, I've added some tools. So these tools are directly from ServiceNow. So I've got get record types, I've got knowledge articles and stuff like that. So these are all essentially Power Platform. So if we're familiar with Power Platform, these are all tools that are pulled from Power Platform, but I'm including all of these so I can do all of these cool things within my agent. So that is a very simple way of building an IT help desk agent. You can get really granular of building out your tools, building out triggers and stuff like that. We can also start talking to other agents. So this becomes important if you're starting to create lots of agents in the organization. There's something called agent proliferation, where we have too many agents and now our end users don't know which agent to use for what and how to use it. So we can create multiple agents and then kind of bring them all together. So I can create an agent, but I can select an existing agent. And these are all the agents that I've made in my tenant. So maybe I want my onboarding buddy as part of my IT help desk. So now my IT help desk agent can reach out to onboarding buddy to get the training materials and the structure of our training materials for that end user. So just something for the future state when you start building out agents and you start making more and more agents, we can now bring them together. So we have kind of a central place for our users to be able to interact with all of this information and not get overwhelmed with all of these different agents in our organization. So that's a little bit about, when we start building things in Copilot Studio. When you want to build it in Studio is when you need some of these advanced tools, like what you saw, Jim. I can't connect ServiceNow to an agent made in Copilot Web UI. So this is where we think about moving things to Studio, is when we want to have more advanced tools and connectors, things like triggers. Triggers are things like when this happens, so we can start building autonomous agents that automatically do something like when an email comes in, do this for me or something like that, connecting to other agents and so forth. And then we can also have more broader controls of sharing. So I can share to teams, Copilot to SharePoint, to a variety of different channels that I can share this agent to. And then I also have permission controls over those agents. So I'm not going to dive into that now, but as an admin, I can go to Microsoft Admin Center and I can say who gets access to this agent and not. So I have some of those more governance controls and around the agents that I'm building in Copilot Studio. So that's kind of from prompting to agents. We covered a lot, prompting basics, prompting use cases, and kind of dug into some of the agents that we've built and some of the agents that our customers are building as well. So with that, I'd welcome any kind of questions. If you have questions, please try to raise your hand or put it in the Q&A. But Nick, anything online for us?
No, the chat's a little silent. Jim had answered a question for one of the folks online, but I think that's good. I mean, feel free to answer or ask any questions in the chat. Sorry, in the Q&A section, I should be more specific. We do have a chat, but we have it disabled usually for webinars. So there's a Q&A section at the very top of your control ribbon.
All right. Well, Jim, I say we did a good job then.
As always.
So with that, the one thing I will leave you with is the thing that I've learned the most is just ask Copilot. If you don't think, if you have a question, just ask it, and it most likely will have a way to help you. Sounds weird sometimes, but that's just a thing that I've learned. There's been times where I'm like, can AI really do this? And I'm surprised at how it can answer a question or get something back that I needed. So one thing that I would just ask Copilot, you'll be surprised that maybe it can help you in ways that you didn't think so. Nick,
So Michael, yeah, we do have a question from Jose is asking, is there any way for an agent to take actions without prompts?
yes. So that's where I showed you some of those triggers in Copilot Studio. That's where you'll need to build an agent in Studio. You can't do this in Agent Builder. But yes, those triggers are, if you're familiar with Power Platform, essentially we're inheriting all of those triggers from Power Platform. But things like when an email comes in, when an Excel file gets updated, there's thousands of different triggers. But I myself created a Mailbot 3000. So as for fun. So when an email came in, it was instructed to automatically reply to it based on certain criteria and stuff like that. But absolutely, that would be called an autonomous agent that you can build.
Got another question from Lance here that asks, how do you go about estimating costs for deploying these agents?
So one, we have an estimator tool. That's the first. I don't know if Nick or Jim, if you got that handy that you could post in the Q&A, but that would be my first thing. It's actually, I believe it's on GitHub or something like that. But that estimator would allow you to input certain things to kind of estimate your costs there. So that would be the first step I would take. The next step is that's an estimator too. We use estimator and we highlight estimation. So there's sometimes it can be very hard to kind of figure out what usage, because we have 4,000 users maybe, but do we really know 4,000 people are going to use it? We don't know. So the best way to do that is if you have an agent, especially if you make it in Copilot Studio, publish it out to a certain handful of users to kind of start testing it. And then there's reporting tools built in within Copilot Studio. So in that agent, there's an actual analytics section. So we can look at the types of prompts and the usage there, as well as Copilot, as well as Power Platform has reports on Copilot usage that we can look at for agents made in Studio. So I would keep an eye on those as you kind of go through that pilot phase with that agent to kind of just figure out how much consumption there is, because it just depends on everything that you have. If you have multiple connectors and you have some things like agent flows, those will have some dynamic cost to them on message consumption. So that's what I would recommend, estimator, and then just deploy it to a pilot group and monitor that usage to kind of gauge how much cost potentially you're going to get per user. Yeah, Nick.
So going back to Jose's question about an agent to take action without prompts, what about for monitoring a feed or a stream from PagerDuty, maybe restarting a service?
The way that I would say that is, it's always, with the thing I've learned, it's always possible if you're willing to put in the work. So let's take your example of maybe I've got something that I want to, if a service goes down and I want to restart it. If there's an API that you can leverage that has instructions for you to be able to do that, you could do that. There's some manual legwork on your end to kind of build that so the instructions or that we can essentially utilize that API in there. But in Copilot Studio, you can use custom APIs to be able to do things. So the answer is yes. It's just a matter of if that vendor or third-party software has an API or something that we can leverage within Studio to do that action.
Sometimes it's as simple as just using an email inbox as managing some of that, because I've run automation where, when an email is received, now go run this PowerShell script, right? That might go out and restart a service. So again, it's as complex or as easy, but like Michael said, ask Copilot.
Yeah. The thing I've learned is start small. Like, don't like overthink something. I think a lot of customers have really overthought something, or they want to create this grand agent that has this huge impact for the organization. And while that's awesome, and I would encourage you to do that, that takes a long time to create. So start small, like those 3 top use cases we discussed, those document search libraries, legal and stuff like that. Start small, get a win, have people start utilizing it. They'll start asking questions of how'd you make this? And can I make this? And then you start organically growing your agents and within your organizations, targeting certain business processes that users are bringing up as feedback. But don't overthink stuff too much. Build on the stuff that you're building until you get to the point where you're satisfied with that.
Yeah. So to expand on that, the employee self-service agent, that you were discussing earlier, right? Start small. You can always add on to that particular agent. You don't have to create a bunch of new ones, but that's one where you can keep stacking the blocks on top of it to build out your connectors and your responses, your disclaimers. You can always layer that into that type of agent.
You were talking about that, Jim, not me. You brought that up.
Well,
that's all you, man. That's all you. You've had more experience in employee self-service than I have. Any other questions? Looks like Q&A is all good. So I appreciate everybody's time for taking the hour. I'm going to enjoy my Mountain Dew and go get some lunch. But Jim, thank you for joining me. It was awesome working with you here on this one. And Nick, thanks for managing Q&A. And if you have any questions, reach out to your Microsoft team. SCs like myself, Jim, and Nick are here to kind of answer those questions. But I appreciate the time today. Take care, everyone.